Matter Radio Network. Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free. And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
All right, here we go. It's Fade to Black. We are back. This goes out to everybody listening at Bell Gab right now. It's the Friday edition. May 9th, 124 days into the new year. Live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in Burbank, California. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Welcome. Welcome to everybody listening all around the world. Got a big show tonight. David Icke, live from the UK. I would say London, but it's not London. But it is over there. Start off every show the same way. I'm going to do it right now. Big salute to the proud men and women in uniform all around the world, fighting the good fight for us. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us, and you couldn't hear me right now. And I really need you to think about that. All right, let's go. Let's get it cracking. Our dead guy birthday today, Howard Carter. That's right, the discoverer of King Tut's tomb in 1923. But the crazy thing about Howard Carter is his death at such a late age crushed the curse of the pharaohs. The alleged curse believed to be cast upon anybody who disturbs a tomb of the mummy of an ancient Egyptian person, especially a pharaoh, brought immediate death. Everybody else died around him, but not him. He lived to the ripe old age of 64. Born in 1874, died in 1939. The tomb was discovered in 1923, so he hung out. Do the math. What is that, another 16 years? I think it was all good in Howard's world. Just think if he never found it. There'd be no golden anything. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Twitter is @JChurchRadio. You know what to do. So let's get the hangouts going tonight. But remember to hashtag DMRadioNet. Hashtag DMRadioNet. That'll get you in the little Twitter chat room over at Dark Matter Radio. Follow, like, subscribe. If you're subscribing or you've subscribed and you go over to YouTube, you can see what's been going on. It's a little out of control. Totally humbling, though. It's just like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and all that's going to be gone. That's how I feel. But right now, we're riding that wave, and it's pretty great. Same thing over on the Facebook page. So you know what to do. You don't need instructions. Tonight, we will not have open lines. But you know what I'm going to do? Between now and David Icke, I'll tell you what. I'll do this for everybody. Between now and David Icke, I'll open up the lines. I got a lot of stuff to talk about, but if there's anything you need to get out there. But with David, the time is precious, and he's calling from the UK. So, that's he's getting up at like 2:30, 3:30 in the morning for this. He said in one of his emails to me, he goes, "Hey, Jimmy, mate, it doesn't hurt as bad when I say it out loud, but when I type it, it's painful." Oh, man. But, he did do 10 hours straight at Wembley Arena. Improvised on stage. So tonight's show at 2:30, 3:30 in the morning from the UK, I'm sure he can do standing on his head. It's not that big of a deal. But so between now and David Icke, you know what? I'll bust open the phone lines. 323-823-5045. 825-5045. What did I say? 823-825-323-825-5045. Email throughout the show, jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. You can do it over on the website. Go to the contacts page. It's right there. You can figure it out if you want to do it in confidence. And we have specially encrypted non-NSA servers over there. So if you're scared, that's the place to do it. You want to do it anonymously. Send some kind of crank email. And, all that stuff stops at the producers. I never see it. I never get to see the fun stuff, the stupid stuff. All right. Let's see. What have we got going on? Here's an email from Luke Quinn about this third phase of moon thing that I've kind of started. And it's this. He says, if you get Blake on your... He says... Please get Blake on your show. They do have some very questionable content on their YouTube, but they also have some very interesting stuff on there too. At least they're getting it out there. And almost 163,000 subscribers is no joke. I think a chat with you would be very interesting. Okay? So, yeah, we're talking about it. If we do it, it'll be next Thursday, by the way. Next Friday will be Craig Brown from truthfall.com, and that's coming in. He'll be doing it live from Australia. And, I've been talking about the Dragonfly drones over the last couple of days. Craig is one of the most knowledgeable people out there. And some of the info that I have been laying out there over the last few days on Dragonfly has come from Craig. So he is booked. He will be in here next Friday from Brisbane, Australia. Wow, it's kind of crazy. Tonight, David Icke, from one direction across the water. Next week, Craig, other direction across the water. But so that'll be next Friday. If we do Blake, I'm gonna have to move some stuff around, but it would be on Thursday. Wednesday, of course, is Marshall Clarfield. That's gonna be a great show too, by the way. All right, and if you do get a chance. You need to go to truthfall.com and just check it out. It's like a little precursor. It's a little study session on Dragonfly. It's a great site. It's a fun site. It's a good site. And but go and check it out because there you can access all of Isaac's original web stuff that he posted about the Palo Alto Carrot Labs, PACL. And, the Commercial Applications Research for Extraterrestrial Technology Laboratory, PACL. So, go check that out. It's a good read. It's a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff there, and you need to be patient. You should do kind of like what I did, which is dedicate a couple hours of solid, straight reading with no interruptions and get through it. Get through it all because then everything kind of comes into focus and makes sense. All of those photographs and all of the documentation that were posted and commented about, it's all spelled out there by Isaac. It's good reading. It's really good. And if it's a hoax, if it's fake, it's even better if you ask me. Seriously. And it is kind of like Teeter. There's a little John Teeter-ish stuff with this. And for me, it's not a hoax. It is not a hoax until somebody gets busted. And in this case, nobody has been busted yet. So there you go. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and take our first quick break, and I'll be back right after this. Stay with us. This is, David Icke's calling in now. He's calling in early. Oh, no. What do I do? Dark Matter Radio Network for Bell Gab. This is the Friday edition. Be back right after this. Stay with us, everybody. Don't touch that mouse. David Icke tonight for the next 2.5 hours. Stay with us.
listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right. Ha-ha. Yeah. And I do mean that. I say this every night. Studio is dark. Spooky in here. We got to have it that way tonight. Today's Friday. It's the Friday edition Bell Gab. Bell Gab, the Friday edition. It bothers me so much when somebody says, hey, man, you know what? Jimmy, you do this on the show too much. You say that to me, you're going to get it 50 times in one night. I said Kraken twice one night like 4 months ago. Somebody just sent me an email or something, and that's it. It's a Kraken world now. It's the way it is. You got to love it. Tonight, David Icke. This is KJCR. On the Dark Matter Radio Network, Fade to Black. All right. Sitting here exchanging text right now with Mr. Icke. He's ready to go. So let's get the news out of the way. I'll do it as fast as I can. I'm as excited as you are. All right. Pings are gone. Plane is gone. Debris is gone. That's right. That's the headline. But today... This came out of Atlanta, the Atlanta Register, I believe, that apparently a bunch of scientists on the case, everybody's been looking in the wrong ocean. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. The wrong ocean. I'm going to post some stuff about this over the weekend. This is breaking news right now. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. I verify and re-verify everything twice, 3 times. But right now, the wrong ocean. So before I say anything more, have you seen the movie Millennium? One of our good friends here at the show, Don Gilchrist, over in the UK, happened to send me this today. He's like, hey, dude, man, that's where, that's MH370. It's the movie Millennium. And I forgot all about that. And this is the thing. If you haven't seen the movie Millennium, then you've missed one of the best, very best time travel movies ever that is just slid under the radar. Probably because it stars Chris Christopherson and Cheryl Ladd, Wonder Woman or Charlie's Angels. But Millennium, and I'll never forget the first time that I saw it, was just, clicking around on DirecTV one night and, oh, what's this? Oh, cool. Okay. Watched it and went, oh, my goodness, this is good stuff. It's a remarkable movie. It's about time travel, but it's about time travel and airplanes. And I'm not going to give away the story. I am not, but I am sure you can watch that for free anywhere. The movie came out in like 1980-something, mid-'80s, late 80s. But it is a remarkable movie, and it's the way that they've constructed the theory of time travel in that movie is worth watching for all of us time travel nuts out there. You need to check it out because it's really well done. And I'm not going to say anything else. The movie is a great one, and it just slid under the radar, and I can't believe dropped the ball on that one. But I think thank you, Don, for getting that to me today. Millennium is the flick. All right. Today, the Navy paid a penny to get rid of the aircraft carrier Saratoga. And this is the second time in 2 years that they paid a penny for somebody to come and pick it up and tow it and tear it down. Reminds me of those videos on YouTube in India of those the shipwrecking yards where they're just crashing freighters onto the shore and everybody's running out and tears. Well, that's what's going on here. Now, I don't know why the Saratoga, it's 56,000 ton. I mean, that thing rode through Desert Storm, goes all the way back to Vietnam, commissioned in 1956. I think it's a historical vessel. And why isn't it a museum? I mean, I love going on to the Intrepid out there in Manhattan. And I would think out here in California, that would be a great, sell it to me for a penny. Tow that sucker right to Long Beach. Park it next to the Queen Mary. I would love it. I can't believe they're just going to cut it apart. Kills me. It really does. Kills me. But happened today. It's going to happen again in a couple of months with the USS Constellation. A penny. Saratoga, though, that's the one. That should be a museum. I was up in, and if anybody out there knows what I'm talking about, just confirm this. Tweet it. But I was up in Port Angeles, up in Washington. I was heading over to Victoria, Canada. And I'm up at Port Angeles. We pull in the morning. We're going to catch the jet ferry and head across. And Port Angeles is really cool. It's like the northwesternest most city in the continental United States. Port Angeles. And if you've been there, it's really cool. It's like a postcard. We get there. The fog's starting to clear. We grab some coffee with my sister and my brother-in-law. And we're walking around. And I look, and through the fog, I see an aircraft carrier sitting in a little tiny town, little fishing village. And I look, and there's an aircraft carrier. And I turn to my brother and sister, and I'm like, I'll be back. And I take off walking, and I get closer and closer, and it's some aircraft carrier being scrapped, sitting up there in the fog. It was one of the coolest things ever that I've ever seen. And this reminds me of what's going to happen to the Saratoga. They're going to cut it apart and sell it. Bought it for a penny. It's insane. Anyway, I don't know why. Sorry for that. I apologize. Russia plans to colonize the moon by 2030, according to the Russian newspaper Izvestia. Russia is planning to put a manned colony on the moon as soon as 2030. It's racing to dispatch a couple of robotic rovers to explore the lunar surface over the next couple of years. Newspaper Izvestia said yesterday that it gained access to a draft government program prepared by the Russian Academy of Sciences, the Roscosmos Federal Space Agency, Moscow State University, and several other space research institutes, outlining a three-step plan towards occupying the moon. The robotic craft are going to be sent up as early as 2015 to 2016 and through the following decade. And then by 2028, Russia would be ready to send manned missions to orbit the Earth's satellite. Now, think about this for a second. That is how many years after the last man walked on the moon? I can't do the math right now. I'm doing a show. What is it, 60 years, 80 years, something like that? Insane. What took so long? I don't know. The USA Network, check this out, is developing a new TV drama about alien occupation. Remember V? V was good. V was good. And anyway, before I just reminisce of the old days, Battlestar Galactica. The USA Network has announced that it is developing an alien-themed drama. This released today by USA Today. through Variety magazine, the local rag here in Burbank, provides the following plot outline for this high-concept thriller. It's going to be called Colony. In 2015, Los Angeles exists in a state of occupation. Some collaborate with the alien authorities and benefit from the new order, while others rebel and suffer the consequences. Colony is a naturalistic drama about a family torn by those opposing forces, making difficult choices as they balance keeping their family together with the struggle of the human race. Get your DVR ready. That's all me. The show is a co-production between Legendary Television and Universal Cable Productions. The executive producers and writers for this project are Carlton Cuse and Ryan Condal. But coming your way. Yeah, that's it. They've signed off on it. Here in Burbank, I don't know. I don't know if they say this around the world, but here in Burbank, they call that green light. It's been green lighted. All right. This story, this is crazy. This is nuts. It looks like it's going to be drone week between now and next Friday. But today, this released by Reuters, and I do a thing. This is what I do. When I see a headline, when I see something come across the wire, I'll go to, on the net, we'll jump 3 or 4 or 5 different mainstream news sources. And they all say the exact same thing. No creativity. Nothing. They don't rewrite it. They just read it. And if you do it on television, just jump around. MSNBC, Fox, CNN, your local, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. Jump around. So whatever your independent network is there, jump around. Check out the news. Check out the headlines. Tape it. And they'll all say the exact same thing. They just read it. Talking heads. It's fascinating to do. Okay. All right. Enough of that. But this happened today with this story about the drone. So I see the headlines come in. Then I get a couple of emails about it. An American Airlines aircraft almost collided with a drone above Florida. Now, this is the story. What we're talking about here, we're not talking about a drone, United States Air Force drone, an NSA drone. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the drone you buy at Radio Shack. The drone you buy at Fry's. I was at Fry's last weekend. Probably my favorite shopping experience every single week outside of Costco. And, going for me, Fry's is that's it. That's Shangri-La. Love it. Go to Fry's now, stacked up to the ceiling, north, south, east, and west, back and forth are drones, RC drones. I went through a really bad RC car phase. The smaller, the better. And they had these little teeny ones, like a half inch radio control cars. Got one around here somewhere, terrorizing my dogs with it. But now it's all about drones. They are everywhere. And they are really good. Now, the thing is, you can go out. The FAA says 400 feet. Now, they should have had some kind of ruling on this. They should have, to make sure that these things don't go over 400 feet. I live in the flight path of Whiteman Airport, a little tiny private airport here in the valley next to Burbank. And my house is on one side of it. The studio is on the other in Burbank proper. All right, give you the lay of the land. But right in the middle is Whiteman. And these planes are cruising over there all day. If I had a little drone, I could just and go collide with a Cessna. No problem. They're landing at, I don't know, how fast do they go when they land? What's the airspeed on a Cessna? I don't know, 75 miles an hour or something. Real slow. But you can see the pilots in the windows. And I could just, it's just insane to me that you can just do this with a drone now. But now, this drone almost collided with an American Airlines commuter craft. And that's kind of scary. Now, what if there were two? What if you were really skilled and you're sitting on the ground and you and your buddy run a couple of these drones, one into each engine? Think about that for a second. That's what's crazy. You can land a plane with one engine. But that's what's nuts about these drones. And I started thinking about this. Now, today, over in South Korea, they find 3 drones crashed on the south side of the DMZ. And these aren't drones like drones. These aren't drones. These are RC aircraft, off-the-shelf parts. They're kind of ridiculous looking if you've seen the pictures. But what North Korea did is they took these normal RC craft, cut holes in it, put literally the words from the South Korean government were Japanese consumer digital cameras are inside these things. And the North Koreans are just cruising these drones around South Korea, taking pictures and having them route back. There's not a whole lot to be done, but the point is it can be. These drones, you can go anywhere. You can go into Fry's, get one of these quadcopters, and go do high-def video anywhere. And now, I agree, it's really cool. I dig it. I've got friends that do it. But it's also a security risk, and it's a flight risk for anybody living around an airport. All of you UFO, CGI, fake video guys that are out there, most of these videos today are some kind of drone with Christmas lights on it. I get it. Okay, go have fun. But, man, not in the flight path of a plane that somebody I know is on it. Uncool. But, yeah, it's going down right now. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. All right. Man, we're almost at the bottom of the hour. David Icke. Should we go and do it? Okay, let's check out these tweets really quick because we're going to be tied up for the next 2 hours. Cozy Hound says, the USS Enterprise was decommissioned last year. I served on 6 carriers during Vietnam. Sad to hear about the Saratoga. I'm with you. I am with you. Let's see. Eugene's got to come in with something. Eugene says, 24-hour MH370 NWO stuff. Yeah, we're at that point. Spaceboy says, you bet you, Jimmy, looking forward to another cracking show. Yes, okay. You say Eugene should have his own wrap-up show. I did? When did I say that? Oh, no, Eugene, that's your idea. Let's see. Forrest Brissy, Fade to Black Rocks. I got it. All right, so that wraps up the tweet. Well, there's a bunch more. Oh, my goodness. Look at this. In the words of Barry, looks like we made it. All right. David Hatch Childress. Really? David Pallades, by the way, Eugene talked to him this week. He wants a little more lead time. I would like to have David on. He does Pallades. He does a good interview. And I would like to get him on the show. No doubt about it. David Childress. What is this going to be? The controversial debunking show? The debunking network? Is that what you guys want this show to turn into? I don't think so. Come here to learn, not to have fun and pin somebody in the corner and call them out. That's not cool. Why do that? The rocks weigh tons. Were floated. Okay, that's enough. All right, I ain't going to do it. All right, let's get the show cracking. Let's go. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, you know what's going on. David Icke. Live from the UK. This is the Friday edition, Bell Gab. Fade to Black, KJCR on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Take a quick break. Don't touch that mouse. When I come back, David Icke in the house. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark Matter.
Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church.
Stay with us, David.
Claro que sí.
Commercial.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, here we go. Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. It's Friday, May 9th. Let's get it going. I'm ready. David Icke is a former professional soccer player, journalist, and network anchorman with the BBC. He was the spokesman in the 1980s for the British Green Party, and since 1990, a full-time investigator onto and into who and what is really controlling the world. He is the author of 15 books, including Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center disaster. On his never-ending quest for the truth, he simply says the cutting edge just moved. Love that line. But David Icke's information presented in a way that everyone can understand is a life-changing exposure of both the illusion we believe to be real and the way this illusion is generated and manipulated through to imprison us in a false reality, and that is a mouthful. Thank you, David Icke. How are you, sir? David, are you with us? David?
Hello?
Oh, there you are. I apologize. That was the wrong fader. Did you hear the intro?
I did.
Okay, good. So we're connected. All right. So 2:30 in the morning, 3:30 over there.
3:30.
And this is the thing, Mr. Icke. You did 10 hours at Wembley, 2 hours at 2:30, 3:30 in the morning. You can do standing on your head. That's the way that I look at it. So,
Well, we'll do our best, mate.
so
It'll get longer I'm up, I suppose.
okay. We're cutting in and out a little bit on your Skype, and I would think that maybe are you PC?
Yeah.
Okay. I think you might want to go over to your call setting and do this for me really quick, and then that way we can run the interview really smooth. Just go down to call, go down to audio settings, click on that, and make sure that the two boxes are unchecked that say automatically adjust microphone settings.
Go to call, yeah.
Okay.
And then to...
Audio settings.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, and now see the two check boxes right there? Are they both checked on? Uncheck the two boxes.
Don't see any check boxes.
Okay, good. Okay, let's move forward. So, David, this is the way I start off every show, and you probably know this, but this is just a free-form conversation, nothing premeditated. I don't have questions in front of me. We're just, sitting in my living room having a conversation, with 7,000 miles between us. But that's what we're going to do, and let's have a good time with it. You ready?
Go ahead.
Okay. You and I both have kind of the same background. I come from a sportscasting background as well before I started this show, and I find that really interesting with you. And so when you authored your first book back in 1991, did you have any idea that you would have this kind of following and that many ears turned to you and listening? Did you have any idea?
Well, say any idea, but I was given the information, shall we say, that this was coming. Because what happened, Jimmy, is that I was, like you say, I was a sports presenter with the BBC. And I was going about my business. And towards the end of the 80s, I became a national spokesman for the British Green Party, which is a story in itself. And one day, I was about 10 minutes or even less from where I'm sitting now, with my son, Gareth, who's now a singer-songwriter, but then he was a little boy. And this is 1990, spring of 1990. And I was playing soccer with him on a little bit of green down near the seafront where I live. And then we were going to have some lunch. So we were going to go to this cafe on the seafront next to the railway station. So we go, and it's full. So we're going to go off and go somewhere else when I was stopped by one of the railway workers on the station, because I was well known in, sports presenter, wanted to talk to me about football. So after this conversation had gone on for a few minutes, I realized that Gareth wasn't next to me anymore, and I knew where he would be. He would be in the newsagent, selling papers and books right on the station. So I walked in, and there he was. And I said to him, Gareth, come on, we'll go and get some lunch somewhere else. And amazing as it may seem, but it's actually true. I turned to leave, and my feet wouldn't move. It was like they were magnetically stuck to the ground, and all this phenomena was completely new to me. So I'm thinking, and it wasn't a voice, but it was a very strong and tangible thought form passed through my head. And it just said, go and look at the books on the far side. And I'm standing there completely bewildered. And even more so because I knew that newsagent shop, and the books on the far side were romantic novels and such like, and which I had no interest. But I started walking in this daze towards the books, and when I got there, in the middle, yes, of all the romantic novels, was a book called Mind to Mind with a woman's face on the front, and I was attracted to that because it was different to all the others. And I picked it up and I turned it over to read the blurb, and I read the word psychic. This was a psychic lady who was writing stories of her life, English lady called Betty Shine.
Okay.
The word psychic struck me powerfully because over the previous year, starting, is it, isn't it, and ending up a year later, actually, this is so tangible, I had the increasingly powerful experience that when I was in a room alone, I wasn't alone. It was like someone else was there, but they weren't. It was like a presence. It was like a feeling that something was in the room. And it reached the point only like 3 weeks before this experience in the newsagent shop, where I'm in a hotel in London, working for the BBC, and I'm in my hotel room alone, and this sense of presence got so powerful that I sat on the side of the bed, and I talked into the room, and I said, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you're driving me up the wall. So I read this book in 24 hours and wrote to Betty Shine and went to see her. And what I told her was not anything about this presence I've been feeling for a year, only that I had rheumatoid arthritis. I wasn't having drugs for it, or I wouldn't be here now. So maybe a hands-on healing, which she did, just an exchange of energy, of course, would help. But the background reason was, will she pick up what's happening to me? Because I'd never been to a psychic before in my life. Anyway, I go along, and we have the first meeting, and we had a nice chat about things and reality and what have you. I found it very interesting. But that was it. And I went along the second time, and I'm on this medical type bench, and she's kind of working on my left knee. And suddenly I felt like a spider's web on my face. And that struck me immediately, because she said in her book, I'd read that when other dimensions or other entities are trying to lock into you, you sometimes feel like a spider's web on your face. Now, of course, in those days, I thought, well, understand it. But what it is, that feeling of the spider's web, is an electromagnetic connection. Mm-hmm. It's like what makes the hairs on your back of your neck stand up when you're in a big crowd of excited people. They're generating that electromagnetism. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of on this bench and feeling this cobweb and thinking, oh my goodness, that's what I read in her book. And I said nothing to her, but within 10 to 15 seconds, she's suddenly launched her head back and said, my God, this is powerful. I've got to close my eyes for this one. Now, I was new to all this, so my backside is slipping down this bench thinking, what have I got into?
Right.
But what she started doing was saying that she could see an entity, which is just a projection, in her mind's eye, if you like, and she was being asked to communicate with me. And the first thing, interestingly, that was said was that, quote, they knew that I wanted them to contact me, i.e. the hotel room, but it wasn't the right time, but now is the right time. And that I hadn't been brought there to be healed, I'd been brought there to be contacted. And then, see, at this time, Jimmy, I'm presenting the sport for the BBC. I mean, what's going on? And I was then hearing, as this experience went on through Betty Shine, that I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets. That there was a vast story that humanity had to know to understand what they were basically controlled by, if you like.
Let me jump in really quick, David. Did you, and I understand and know what it takes to broadcast, and was this weighing on you? You have to concentrate and perform as a sportscaster, as a broadcaster, and then you've got this tremendous information, in the back of your mind. Was it distracting, and how'd you get on with it?
Well, these messages through Betty Shine said that I was going to go out on a world stage and like I say, and reveal great secrets, that I would face enormous opposition, but, quote, they would always be there to protect me. And I always remember one line that she said: one man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world. So, and there were many, many other things as well. And so you're right. I left her house near a place called Brighton in about an hour or so from London. And I got on a train to go to the BBC to do a program the next day. And I'm like in a daze, like what was all that about?
Exactly.
But the synchronicity of life and the way things come together. By the time I had this experience, I was already starting to think, what am I going to do? Because I can't take this vacuous media world any longer. I was myself trying to work out where I could take my life, because although I was presenting national sports programs and in prime time and all that, and you got that's David Icke walking down the street, he's on the BBC or whatever. It was a vacuous world to me that increasingly left me cold, and because of its shallowness and its lack of depth, so I was looking for a way out, but funnily enough, without the BBC knowing any of this, again, synchronicity. I was a young fella. I mean, I was the youngest sports presenter at the BBC by a long, long way. Most of the others, had actually been broadcasting for the BBC on these programs when I was a kid.
Right.
And yet, just a few weeks after the Betty Shine experience, I got a letter from the BBC saying, we're not renewing your contract. And I had many letters from them of commendation for my work. So, I mean, it was a bit of a shock, but in one way. But on another level, it wasn't, because it kind of fitted in with basically your life's going to change and you're going in another direction. So it gave me the opportunity, because I'm a completely non-material person. And thus I work for the BBC, but I live well below my means. And therefore I had, a bit in the bank to be able to go for this initially, not forever, but initially to go for this full time. And that's what I did, because something inside me You call it intuition, call it what you want. Bizarre as on the face of it, these experiences were at that time. Something inside of me said, go for this. This is right. Go for it. And I did, and I've gone for it ever since. And it's led to where it's led to.
Now, by the way, I've watched all of Connecting the Dots, and I've packed them all away. I've watched them all. And how is that going for you? I just want to ask you about that really quick, because it is really good.
Connecting the Dots. Which one's that one?
That's your little TV series.
Oh, that one. Yes. Oh, I forgot about that. You do so many things. Yeah, Connecting the Dots. Yeah, yeah, it's good. I mean, it's a challenge because trying to keep a 24-hour internet television station going is a real challenge financially. But we've managed to do it since November 25th. It's good. And what's fantastic for me and you and all of us today is that, next year I'll have been on this road for 25 years. And when I started out, it was just pure, unadulterated, undiluted ridicule and dismissal. But today, it's transformed with the number of people that actually want to hear this information, and for whom the way the world has gone, and events in the world and changes in the world have shown people that actually it has validity. Because one of the major reasons that so many people have turned to looked at my work in recent years is that what was in the earlier books is now on the television news. It's unfolding, and so we are going into a period where I think that what I was told in that initial Betty Shine meeting in 1990 is actually unfolding, and that was that one of the things I was told is that there was a vibrational change unfolding that was going to act like a spiritual alarm clock and was going to wake people up from their slumber. Initially, it would be the more awake, but eventually it would be the solid gold asleep. And what's interesting to me, Jimmy, is the number of people that I meet who work in the system, who up to very recently would have equated the name David Icke with the cue to laugh, who are now saying, hold on a second, this is starting to make sense. So we although the world moves on in terms of its Orwellian agenda and so fast, I think we're moving towards a cusp where people are starting to see that the fantastic, the unbelievable, the impossible is actually true.
Well, I think one of the I'm just going to suggest this, but I've always thought this as I've followed you, is that vibrational change. One of the possible things that she could have been referring to is the internet. And before 1990, and you and I both know email was a rarity, let alone the internet itself.
I don't think I'd heard of it by then.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so, as you're going down the street, you have a double whammy in that you're a celebrity, you're a known BBC sportscaster and broadcaster, and then you start to go do this, and you went through the ridicule, and you just mentioned it. But one of the things that helped propel everything forward for you to get the message out was the internet. And that's the one thing the global elite I didn't think anticipated back in 1970, 1980, 1990, that the internet would be out there for people to speak and pass information around about this subject.
Well, I think the internet is a very interesting and multi-leveled subject because it is a surveillance dream for these people.
Certainly.
It has an incredible amount of positives for them. But if you're going to have that agenda and you are going to introduce this global communication system, you have to sell it on a positive. I mean, if you look at the things that they bring in, technological things, whatever they are, that have an ultimate controlling surveillance agenda, they don't sell them on the fact that they're going to be able to keep surveillance on everybody. They sell them, for instance, in terms of mobile phones. You'd be able to talk to anyone you like in the street whenever you like. And the internet was introduced with many, many positives. Now, if you look at it, Jimmy, what they're trying to do now is delete the positives and the negatives from their point of view, which is the free flow of information. So we're having all these efforts to censor the internet and to police it. But I do think that although they realized that this was something that could happen in the period before they put the lid on it as they planned.
Right.
Do think they seriously underestimated what the internet would generate in terms of exposure of this agenda. And you are absolutely right. I mean, if I look at the last 25 years and I look at the books I've written and all the other things that I've done, the internet has been absolutely crucial, more than anything else, in getting this information circulating and getting people aware of it. So, it's been an own goal in many ways, but maybe we'll get into it later. But there is a serious and very deep in the rabbit hole agenda for the internet, I would suggest, and crucial to that is to delete the negatives from the cabal's point of view, which is the free flow of information. We must resist that at every quarter, every opportunity that we have.
There's one strange thing that I can't wrap my head around, and it's this: with guys like yourself, I'm not going to put myself at that level, but in that sentence, but yourself, Alex Jones, and other, David Wilcock, and some of the other guys out there that are very outspoken about, cabal, Illuminati, elitist agenda, but you guys haven't been silenced. And, if they were going to take anybody out, if you know what I'm saying, you 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys that are at the top of the outspokenness, for lack of a better word, the internet is still there, and it's still a platform for all of you guys. And I don't know why, and this is my point, I don't know why they haven't tried to clamp it down. Here you and I are, we're talking thousands of miles apart live to a very large audience, and we are speaking very freely. And I'm nervous, because they know that you and I are doing this, and that Alex is doing it every single night, and Wilcock, and you know exactly where I'm going with this. Why haven't they attempted to shut us all down?
Well, first of all, there are people that expose this that give the impression that this cabal is all powerful. It ain't. I see them as little boys in short trousers, really. I think they're pathetic. Any mentality that wishes to control on the level they wish to control, and there's very deep levels of this, is suffering from extraordinary levels of insecurity. Secure people don't want to control everything. They're happy with states of flux and going with the flow. But we're dealing with a mentality that in football terms is not satisfied with controlling one team in the game. It wants to control both teams and the referee so that it knows the final score before the game started. That's the level of insecurity. They are incredibly insecure with states of flux. So they are not all powerful. And the other thing is that in my case, anyway, I speak for myself, those extraordinary levels of ridicule were in many ways an insurance policy for me, because I was putting this stuff out in the 1990s and being faced with this ridicule, and the British media did a job on me, probably unprecedented in history, really, in terms of the scale of abuse and ridicule that I got in the 1990s. And for a while, I guess this cabal that I was exposing said, well, this is good, because if he's saying this, then, people are never going to believe it because they think he's mad, because we've told them to think he's mad. But what happened, Jimmy, particularly after 9/11, which I did see a lot of people start to question things on 9/11, not maybe publicly, but privately. I don't feel good about this. What's happening? That the tide turned, and suddenly, this great interest in my work started to build and build and build, and so it's not in the interest of the cabal for anything to happen to me now that is questionable, because it just gives credibility to what I'm doing. And I've got like 20 books out there now. It's all there if I disappeared. And there's another thing that I think it's important to stress is that I hear people who and come across many people who they will not speak out and say what they know because they fear the consequences of doing so, i.e. these people will kill me. Then I hear other people saying, well, look, I don't know how long they're going to let me say this, but I'm going to say as much as I can before they kill me. And there's another level beyond that, which is where I'm coming from, which is they can't. There are other forces at work, expressed in one way by the forces that communicated through Betty Shine. And if it was the case that you come into this world to try to make a difference and someone goes bang, bang, and you've gone, then there'd be no point. But it's not like that. There is a transformation going on, and it's a transformation that ultimately will change this madhouse into the paradise it once was and will be again. And it's not going to be denied. There are challenges. There are times when you think, where's this going? But ultimately, this whole cabal of control is coming down. And in the end, it's going to come down very quickly. In fact, it's probably going to be at a point where people are saying, hold on a second, we're never going to stop this. In fact, people are saying that already. That when it will come down, because if you have a control system which is fundamentally and absolutely founded on human ignorance, A, of the control system's existence, i.e. in a coordinated way, and B, the nature of reality itself, which if people realized what reality is, they'd realize that they have the power in abundance to change their reality. Then if you can delete that ignorance through the communication of information, and that's building all the time, then the foundation starts to break up. And it's happening, Jimmy. It's happening. You watch CNN, Fox News, it doesn't seem to be happening, but it's happening. And I know this from people who would have ridiculed me at one point. It was stopping me in the street to ask me in a positive way about what's going on. People that you think, not you, never you. Right. And therefore, while it looks bleak when the next level of the control system is introduced, actually, at some point, this is going to come down. It's going to come down because the human ignorance and human apathy that's holding it together is going to change, and it is changing, but it's not yet at the point where it's going to bring it down, but it will.
With you in the beginning, and especially like in 1995, 1996, as you started this steamroll started to take off. Yeah. MI6 and the intelligence services over in the UK have a file on you that's probably 3 feet thick, maybe a whole room. But I'm sure that they were concerned back then, but you're saying now they probably let the foot off the gas pedal a little bit, and they know that they can't stop you, so you're free to do as you will Do you think that they've just completely stopped?
No, I don't. But they do have a big problem because I'm extremely outspoken. I have no fear of these people. They're pathetic.
Right, right. Well,
Fri-
this is I don't I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there's one thing that I'm sure that they do realize. You're not an evil person. You're just speaking the truth and you have a genuine concern for humanity, and that's it, right?
Well, right, because I was 62 the other day, and so my concern is not about my life. It's about anyone, any distance younger than me, down to young kids being born now.
Mm-hmm.
If we think, Jimmy, that this control system and the way the world is going is bad now, then this is not the end. This is just wherever we are is just from this cabal's point of view. It's just another step on the road to where they want to go, which is a world that would make George Orwell wince. I mean, he'll be shaking his head thinking I underplayed it.
Right.
Same with Aldous Huxley. So, but we are the generations that still, going back to what you said earlier, we still have, to an extent, the ability to communicate this uncensored. Although the media censorship building in the UK is quite obvious now. But the thing is that from MI5, MI6, CIA, whatever from that kind of perspective, the more they publicly cause people like me a problem or challenge or whatever, the more credibility they're giving to the person they're challenging. If they'd have, if they were going to stop me, they should have stopped me at the height of the ridicule, because then it wouldn't have been a problem. It would be a problem now. And also, like I say, there are forces at work that make these people in these agencies look like little boys in the playground. So there's a perception of power that these people have, and it's perception. I've just had a new book published, and it's called The Perception Deception. It's nearly 1,000 pages putting all this together. And that's the foundation of it, Jimmy. It is a perception deception. When there's a few of you and you want to control the many, you can't do that physically en masse. You can do it in small areas physically with tanks in the streets and soldiers at the door. You can't do it to 7 billion people. What you have to do is manipulate and program their perceptions so that it's from perception that behavior comes. It's from perception that comes whether you'll challenge something that's being introduced or whether you'll accept it or think it's a good thing. It's all perception. And therefore, this challenge to this cabal, and we're doing it now as we're chatting here, is to challenge the programmed perception of reality on many and various levels, very, very deep levels, some of them. And so the whole edifice of Orwellian power and manipulation is absolutely founded on controlling the perception of the masses. This is where the education system comes in. You prepare them for life. This is where the mainstream media comes in, and so it's hanging by a thread, this omnipotent power, because it's absolutely dependent upon this ignorance and this false perception that people have been programmed to have. Thus, they're terrified. They're terrified of that perception being challenged by other versions of everything. And we have made such enormous strides, Jimmy, in the last few years in communicating this information. It is having an enormous impact quietly, not on the television news or headlines in the newspapers, but actually in reality. it's having a gathering impact, and we've seen nothing yet.
You're exactly right. And as a matter of fact, I said on the show today, leading up to you coming on, there's something that I've always found fascinating with broadcast media, whether it's radio or television. And and I do this all the time, David, and I'm sure you do it too. As soon as a headline breaks, and especially if it's anything to do with fear or the economy, whatever that may be, just remember the first 5 or 6 lines of whatever the talking head says. Then switch the channel. You will find them speaking the exact same words. Switch the channel again. It's there. It would, no matter, go to the radio and listen. And when you think you're listening to somebody speak their mind, you're not. They're reading the words of something that is being fed to them. There's nothing creative. There's nothing original. There's no investigative journalism. They are merely reading what they are being told to read. Or it kills me. And I've asked all of my listeners all the time, go check it out. If you don't believe what I'm saying, go and check it out for yourself. It's fascinating, and you can do this, and it's not just in your local news. It's the New York feed is the same as Los Angeles, as the same as Denver, as the same as Miami. They are all reading the exact same thing at the exact same time to the masses.
Yeah, it's what I call song sheet journalism. Journalism in quotes, not real journalism. And, at the BBC, talk about, Orwellian. They have a department called EdPol. Straight out of Orwell, that is, editorial policy. And before things are broadcast on the BBC News, this so-called kind of monument to broadcast journalism and good broadcast journalism. I've worked there; it ain't. Is being censored in terms of what it puts out all the time. And we have this organization in Britain called Ofcom, which is short for Office of Communications. It's a government agency. It was created by Tony Blair. Say no more. No more necessary. And it is increasingly seeking to impose its censorship upon the broadcast media in Britain. The government is now trying to introduce greater curbs on the print media. So when you look at it, they are terrified of information. That's the thing. This is the revolution. It's not stockpiling weapons and fighting the government, because all you do is hand them the aces then. It's about information. And the reason they're terrified of information is because information changes perceptions, and it's a perception deception. The alternative media and its contribution to this is fundamental to making a difference in the world, because people don't challenge things they don't realize exist, and they don't demand freedom when they think they're free. Because one of the great perception deceptions is to sell the idea that democracy equals freedom, when democracy is another word for tyranny. It's a tyranny with a mask on. In America, it's a classic where and it's the same in Britain, really. Two political parties, different names, different images, but the same control system. So it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican, the same agenda unfolds. I mean, in many ways, Obama, while he's been terrible in terms of policy and what has happened on his watch in his presidency, in terms of perception, it's had positive outcomes, in the sense that here's a guy who, more than anyone, certainly in modern history anyway, gave himself the image that he was different coming in after Bush. who people were sick of, and he was going to be different. He was going to change this. He was going to change that, change the other. He was going to challenge what was going on. And what he's been is just a almost in some areas Bush on steroids, but certainly a continuation of the same themes, the same policies, the same direction. And this, I know from my experience talking to people, has made a lot of people say, well, hold on a minute. There's no difference between any of them, is there? And of course there isn't, because as I used the analogy earlier about wishing to control the outcome of a football match before the football match starts by controlling both sides and the referee, in a political sense, they control any party that has a chance of forming the government. Same in this country and these others as well. And they also control the referee. I mean, they control the Supreme Court in America, and these so-called checks and balances organizations. So they control the game. And we have this farce of I'm a Republican, so I stand for this, and I'm against Obama, and Obama, I'm a Democrat, and I stand for this, and I'm against, the Republican. And it's all a game. It's all a farce. And of course, Congress is bought and sold, just as the British Parliament is. And so it's a single political party, a single political direction, which is given different names. It's like, we talk about the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, but they're different names for the same body of water. It's just the same water, just give it different names in different places. And that's what Democrat and Republican and Labour Party and Conservative Party in Britain really are. They're labels for the same networks. And Obama's dramatic lack of change in terms of challenging the system on the back of that election campaign, which was all about that, has made, I know, a lot of people think, what's the point? What is the point in voting? Do you know something? There is no point, because you're voting for masks on the same face.
That's interesting. And when we talk about, the purse strings that that are being pulled, above Putin, above Obama, is what's pulling those strings not necessarily a person or a group? Is it just money? I mean, is that the end? All that makes the cabal and the Illuminati, whatever their objective is it just money, or is it for fun? I mean, what is the drive?
Whoa, crikey! That's why the Perception Deception is nearly 1,000 pages long. It depends on what level you're talking about. I mean, if you think of a compartmentalized pyramid, or talk about a spider's web, or let's take the pyramid first. You've got a pyramid where the top of it is tiny, goes to a point, but what's holding the point up there is an ever widening base to the bottom. And human society has been structured as a compartmentalized pyramid. So the few at the top know how the pyramid works. They know the real agenda. They know where they really want to take the world. And the further you come down from that pyramid peak, that capstone, you're meeting more and more and more people in the pyramid, human society, who, with every step down, know less and less and less about what it's all about. They only know their contribution and their personal experience. So there are people in that pyramid that are pushing the financial policies that are ultimately designed for human subjugation and enslavement. But their motivation at that level is, I want more and more and more money. But at the top, they have so much money because they control the system and the financial system, that it's not about money. Money to them is the ability to control. You can use the spider's web as well. If you and how this works, if you imagine a spider's web, and there's the spider at the center, and we can get to the spider because the spider ain't actually human if you get into the real depth of the rabbit hole. And then you've got the strands of the web going outwards, and the strands represent secret societies, semi-secret groups, and out in the outside of the web, it represents government departments, political parties, banks, etc. But the strands really close to the spider, they are the most exclusive secret societies and satanic groupings that some of them don't even have names, because if you don't have a name, it's more difficult to track it down and to expose it. And they are the inner circle people. They know what the spider is, and they know what the ultimate agenda is. And then you start coming out of the spider's web from the center, and it's all secret societies. But the further you come out, the less the vast majority of the people in those secret societies know what the real game is. They only believe what they're told. Like, for instance, the vast majority of Freemasons are on the bottom levels, 3 levels of degree. At that level, you are, unless you're one of the chosen ones going through the system, you are clueless about what the Freemasonic networks are really used for. I mean, I live in a town on an island called the Isle of Wight. It's a town called Ryde of about, I don't know, 25,000 people, 30,000 people. And the Freemasonic Lodge here, we have loads on the Isle of Wight. It's unbelievable per head of population. Ridiculous, really. They had an open day, just they were all open. And I'm of course, I'm straight in there. And I went around with a friend of mine and talked to some of these people. And I was telling them what the symbols meant. So, they were clueless. Because at that level, they are compartmentalized from the real story behind Freemasonry. In fact, I did a talk on the Isle of Wight a few weeks later. A lot of those Freemasons came, and they were absolutely shocked to see what their organization is really about. But most of them, they'll use it for a bit of manipulation and get a few business deals and a few local government contracts because of their, fellow Freemasons. But in terms of the big picture, they are clueless. It's all compartmentalized.
Now, David, you couldn't. I have to interrupt. You can't walk around the Isle of Wight or in your town of Ryde anonymously. Okay, you can't. That's impossible. But when you were at these, when you walked into a Freemason lodge, did anybody try to say, "Hey, come over to the dark side"?
No. No. Do you know what? The Isle of Wight is a very strange place. It's a beautiful place, and it's a lovely place to live. But when I first came here, they said to me, "Have you met the Isle of Wight Mafia yet?" And what were you talking about? Because I hadn't had my experience by then.
Exactly.
But and the Isle of Wight is run by the Freemasons, and I went off their Christmas card list very early on. But you see, when I walked in there as a member of the public, because the public were coming and going all day because they were having an open day, there was nothing they could do to stop me. And to be honest, most of them are so ignorant of what they're part of. They're not aware of it of what's going on anyway. But it was a real interesting experience for me to see how little most of them actually knew about the organization that they were so dedicated to and so in awe of. So if you come out from the center of the web, from the middle to the outside, there comes a point where there's a cusp, and that cusp is where the hidden meets the seen. And it's at that cusp that you find organizations like the Bilderberg Group and the Council on Foreign Relations, etc., particularly the Bilderberg Group, because the Bilderberg Group is secret in the sense that what happens in its meetings is not made public. But because of the work of the alternative media, a very dedicated work by a very few people to start with, it's no longer secret in terms of its existence, which it basically was when I started out on this journey. Bilderberg Group, what are we talking about? Never heard of it. And so through the Bilderberg Group, the dictated agenda for the world that comes ultimately from the spider comes through into the scene. And of course, people that attend Bilderberg meetings, they are people from politics, from banking, from intelligence agencies, from the corporate world, people like Google, etc., which is a fundamental part of this whole unfolding agenda. Organizations like Google, especially the transhumanist agenda, and so through this web, Jimmy, the agenda dictated by the spider comes out through the web and then eventually into the world of the scene, so that it can be brought into being through changes in legislation and law through governments. And people think, who don't know how this network operates, that government policy comes from government. It doesn't. Governments are vehicles to introduce the policy and make it a part of human society. They don't actually dictate it ultimately. So someone like Obama, he's not in control of the White House any more than George Bush was, any more than Clinton was. These are pawns. These are vehicles. They're frontmen to bring that spider policy into law. So he signs now. I mean, this extraordinary situation you have in America, although it is similar in Britain, but not quite so blatant, where one single man, and let's be fair, in truth, we don't know anything about his background. I mean, this man's history is like a mystery in truth. But he can now sign an executive order, which is as someone in the Clinton administration said about executive orders, swish of the pen, law of the land. Exactly. That's how ludicrous it is. And he can introduce laws that fundamentally affect people's lives and impose Orwellian laws upon people. And it's not even gone through Congress, bloody waste of time. That would be most of the time, but it doesn't even do that. So if you can control the presidency by controlling the money and by controlling the media to emphasize one candidate and to undermine the other, and you can dictate who stands for office. So, for instance, when you want Obama in, this man who is promoted as this young, fresh man of change, well, who do you put against him? John McCain. So people think they're making a choice in that when they vote, but their choice is being directed. And so if you can control the president with the power to, swish of the pen, law of the land, then from the hidden, you can dictate changes in human society. And that's how it works all over the world.
Now, this is the thing, and you're exactly right, and it's an easy concept to understand if you just think about it one way. The Tony Blairs and the Obamas and the Bushes, they come and go, but the secrecy behind that is long established and continues long after somebody leaves office. And that's it. If you just understand that basic kernel of what you're trying to get across, then it's very easy to understand. It's not complicated.
It's not. And, the whole thing is very simple. I mean, the Perception Deception is nearly 1,000 pages long because it connects so many dots across so many different subjects. But in the dot connected sense, it is so simple to explain and so simple to understand. And what they do is they cover that with this apparent massive complexity. The world's so complex. Well, it's complex in the way it plays out and appears to play out, but where it's coming from and how it's coming from there is actually very straightforward. And so if you are a hidden force, and you control the banking system in the same way that I'm described. The banking system is a series of strands in that web, which again is dictated to in terms of what it does and where it goes by the spider. You control the political system in the same way. You control the corporate world in the same way. You control the media in the same way. But from that those hidden shadows, you control the system. And you're absolutely right in what you say about coming and going politicians. I say to people sometimes, all over the world, there are underground bases. They call DUMBs, deep underground military bases, which presidents never go in and actually are not allowed to go in. Their security cover and clearance doesn't allow them to go into the lower levels of these DUMBs, these underground bases. So my question is this. As the presidents come and go, oh, I'm voting for Obama. Oh, I'm voting for Bush. Who's calling the shots about what happens in those bases? Who's calling the shots? What is the force that's doing that, no matter who's in power in the White House or Downing Street? And the other thing is, okay, people come and go, and if you look at the process, Jimmy, if the few are going to control the many, they have to centralize decision making. The more diversity of decision making you have, the more points of decision making you have, the less control any central point can have over those decisions. So if you're going to reach your goal of control of the population, centralized control of the population, you have to centralize power. And the structure they want and the structure they're moving towards is world government, one government dictating to everyone, a world central bank dictating all finance, a world currency, electronic currency, no other currencies and no cash you can hold in your hand, which we're moving towards so fast. And a world army, which would impose the will of the world government. NATO is the stalking horse for that. And that's where they want to go. And so what we've seen in this process, whoever's been in power around the world, the process has been the incessant centralization of power in every area of our lives. So we have media organizations at one time. There were numerous, and now there's a tiny number of corporations that basically own the global media. We have a few banks. Indeed, it's one bank in the end, if you go high enough in the pyramid or deep enough in the spider's web, that's dictating the global financial system. Excuse me. Increasingly, through NATO, we're having a central point dictating who is bombed and who isn't. And we reached a point a long time ago now where this process was given a name: globalization. What is globalization? It is the incessant centralization of global power. And what we're seeing now with the Trans-Pacific Partnership and these other groupings and these other trade areas, the European Union is a classic example, is the centralization of power over economics and endless other things that is now bringing in laws that corporations can sue or take governments to a court for doing things that affect adversely the corporations. In other words, the corporations are dictating, will dictate in this process, openly now, as they move on, government policy. They've been doing it secretly for a long, long time. So what we've seen is this process of centralization of power in all areas of our lives. Now, people have been coming in, oh, I'm the president now. Oh, no, I'm the president. I'm the prime minister now. Oh, I'm from this party. I'm from that party. But the common theme, Jimmy, is that this process has gone on whoever is in power. So the question comes again for anyone that's interested in knowing what's happening in the world: what is the constant common force that is spanning these different politicians representing apparently different parties that drives this agenda unceasingly and unchanged, generation after generation and decade after decade. And that network, that force, that common theme is this network that I symbolize as a spider's web being dictated by the force in the center.
How do you account for an individual's complete loss of morals and emotions? You're not born that way. And, because that's exactly what's going on. There is absolute no moral value when you're talking about somebody that is not only controlling these corporations, but also the military wings, the NATOs, where there is zero concern for society at large. And I don't get where the moral, that core moral value is lost. Where does that happen, and how is that instituted?
Whoa, we get some deep stuff now, Jimmy.
Well, I got to go there, David.
Yeah, you have. And when I say we're getting into some deep stuff, well, to answer that question in a more expanded way, we've got to go into some areas that are way beyond the world that we perceive.
I'll open the door, David. You walk through it with me, okay?
Okay. Well, let's start this way. Since that Betty Shine experience, one of the things that was said in that at that time with Betty Shine, those communications through her, was that from that point, I was going to be led to knowledge, and at other times, knowledge would be put in my mind, and it would come to me as insight out of nowhere. And all I can say, Jimmy, is virtually from the time that I left her house in March 1990, that has happened ever since. Just an amazing synchronicity of information coming to me from endless sources. And it's taken a very clear process. It's come to me almost in the perfect unfolding form that makes it most easy to put the pieces together. And it started out with the kind of stuff that we've been talking about so far. How, if you like, what I call the 5 sense level of reality, human society as we perceive it, is dictated by these networks that I'm describing. Then from about the mid 1990s onwards, what I was coming across that was behind this human, if you like, network is a non-human force. And what followed that was a series, which is still going on now, of massive revelations about the illusory nature of reality. And, in terms of the alternative media, they do fantastic work. But in many areas, they still see the world, although they see as conspiracy, they still see the world in terms of mainstream society. And therefore, when people like me come out with stuff that's beyond what the eyes can see, we are dismissed. I'm certainly dismissed by the alternative media, or great chunks of it, just as much as the mainstream dismiss me. Because if you've got a religious belief system, or you've got a scientific belief system, i.e. you see reality as mainstream science does, you're never going to get it. Because to understand what is happening in the world you can see, you have to understand what's happening in the world that you can't see. Because human society, the one we experience, is basically like a movie screen playing out. What I've been in pursuit of all these years is where that projection's coming from. And what is this common theme force that spans the generations, no matter who's in power? And in terms of the illusory nature of reality, I could talk about this for hours, but I'll just keep it short. People think when they look through their eyes, well, they actually think they're looking through their eyes, but that's another story. But when they look through their eyes, let's leave it like that. They think they're seeing everything in the space they're looking at. Humans are seeing a tiny, almost laughably narrow frequency band, which science calls visible light. It is, even according to mainstream science, visible light is like I say, a laughable fraction of what exists in terms of mass and matter and energy in the space that you're looking at. It's like a holographic television station. You're tuned to it. The human body, the human brain, is decoding reality within a tiny frequency band. So if you are broadcasting, say, on Radio 1 or Television 1, that's what you get when you turn the radio on with Radio 1 on the dial, or you turn the television on to Channel 1. That's what you get. You don't get Channel 2 or Channel 3 or Channel 4, but all those channels are still broadcasting. And they're sharing the same space as the one you're watching, but you're not tuned to them. Your television radio is not tuned to them. So then you go from Radio 1 or Television 1 to number 2, and now you're hearing and watching a different reality. But Channel 1 has not ceased to exist just because you've moved from it on the dial. It's continuing to broadcast. It's just that you're not tuned to it anymore, so you're not aware of it.
That's right.
And while we are experiencing visible light, that frequency, there are infinite number of other frequencies, dimensions, realities, better word, that are sharing the same space. Now, as with radio, the radio stations do not interfere with each other unless they're very close on the dial, and then you can get interference. And in using that analogy, there are frequency bands of reality close to this one, which do allow literal, in every sense of the word, interference with our reality. And, you know, when you research this, you see, when you look at ancient accounts and ancient versions of the world and reality, you see that it's actually in plain sight. Over the years, I've had a lot of ridicule by talking about different entities manipulating human society through particular bloodline networks. And when I get to the end of this, Jimmy, I'll answer your question very clearly because of what I'll say about why these people have no morality. So if you look at different accounts of the world and history in ancient societies, you find an absolutely common theme, and that is of a force that is manipulating from the hidden. So you have, for instance, and this is really very significant, I would suggest. In 1945, at a place called Nag Hammadi in Egypt, about 70 odd miles, I think, from Luxor on the Nile, a sealed jar was found, which contained texts and documents that were written, probably written, it's estimated, about maybe 100 AD, and maybe buried maybe about 400 AD. There's some of the estimates, but that's the time period we're talking about. And they were written by a people known as the Gnostics, the pre-Christian Gnostics, that were very enlightened people. They were the people, the belief system that ran the great library at Alexandria, which was destroyed by the Roman Church, and was a depository for extraordinary numbers of ancient texts from around the world, detailing not just the world and reality as they saw it, but detailing human history up to that point. And a lot of those documents were destroyed by the Roman Church, but I tell you what, a vast number of them will still be in the vaults of the Vatican to this day. They don't want us to know this stuff. But thanks to this sealed jar, and what was great about the contents was that unlike biblical texts, they've not been in the public domain, so they've not been changed to suit the authority of the day as these other texts have been. And when you look at them, a fifth of the contents of these texts is referring to a hidden force they call the archons. And the archons ultimately are an energetic phenomenon that doesn't take form, but can take form. And interestingly, they talk in these texts about the form that they take when they do is overwhelmingly a reptilian, which of course I've been writing about for a long, long time, back into the 90s. And also they describe another form, which is classically describing what we call gray aliens. Anyway, when you look at what the Gnostics say about the archons, it's what the Islamic faith and indeed the pre-Islamic world, because that's where this stream of information came from, it's what they say about the jinn. For instance, the Gnostics say that the archons are made from luminous fire. The Islamic and pre-Islamic world says that the jinn are made from smokeless fire. And then you look at the demons in Christianity. They're being described in the same terms. You get Central American shaman talk about a force, a hidden force, manipulating force called the flyers. And how they describe them is in exactly the same terms as the jinn, the archons, etc. And what the Gnostic writings say about the archons is that they are controlled by an entity that they call the demiurge or the Lord Archon, and they relate this to the Judeo-Christian Yahweh Jehovah God, and also to what they call Satan, the devil, whatever. And that this demiurge is what the Gnostics called a fake god that created our physical material reality as we perceive it, that they are inorganic entities, which means not resulting from or produced by growth. They're artificial in a way. And they describe them as having no creative imagination and what they call intentionality. In other words, putting it simply, if you gave them a blank sheet of paper, they couldn't create anything on it. But you give them a piece of paper with something on it, and they can twist it and manipulate it. They talk about the fact that they're mind parasites, that they what we would call possess human minds and dictate their reality, that they are experts at deception, that they're like what we would call cyborgs, a robotic race that can imitate but not innovate. And the term used is they're experts in counter mimicry, piggybacking and changing something that already exists. And so they cannot directly create a prison reality for humans. They have to manipulate humans to create it for themselves, which is what they've done. And the other thing, and this really is very, very relevant, they are experts in inversion. They invert everything. And if you see human society as it's become, it's an inversion of the natural order. It's not the natural order to mass bomb people. It's not the natural order to let them starve in a world of plenty. It's not the natural order to have people homeless and living in the streets with their families, while other people have unbelievable, mind-blowing amounts of wealth. That's not the natural order. The human society is an inversion. And so how does this hidden force manipulate human society when it's operating from a frequency band, yes, close to this one, but not close enough for them to operate openly in our reality? They can project themselves in various forms like reptilian and greys, but they can't stay here indefinitely.
Can they overlap?
In what sense?
And stay constant, just on the fringe, but always there.
They're always there. That's
Right.
the point. They're
Right.
always there. And one of the reasons they're always there is because, you see, in my view, what the Gnostics are describing as the demiurge and the archons being what the demiurge created, they say, is actually a distortion. You know, we think of self-awareness and we think of consciousness as something that must have two legs, a head, a torso, and two arms. But awareness is awareness. Ultimately, when we're not in the body, our awareness is just awareness. It's a point of attention within infinite reality. That's what individuality is. It's we're all one infinite consciousness, but with different points of attention within that infinite awareness. So a energetic distortion can be self-aware. And that's what I suggest it is. If you think in terms of using our, reality as an analogy, it's like a computer virus. What does a computer virus do? It piggybacks something that already exists and twists it and distorts it. Exactly what this force does. So how does it distort human society without actually, quote, physically, not there is any physical, it's holographic, physically being here? Well, that's where these bloodlines come in. And again, one of the common themes I started to pick up from the mid-90s, Jimmy, was this theme around the world in all these different ancient societies of genetic manipulation and basically the rewiring of human form through what is described as interbreeding, but it doesn't have to be procreation. It can the genetic mutation can take place in much more advanced ways. And of course, the most famous accounts of this are in the Bible. The sons of God who interbred with the daughters of men, the Nephilim. But in all these other ancient societies, they have the same themes of using different names. This is the key. When people have researched ancient accounts and ancient legends, they've so often taken the names of the gods. I mean, again, the gods. This is the archons we're talking about, to be different, a different force, different entities. When actually they're all the same force being described by loads and loads of different people. They've just used different names, and it's different names that's thrown people off the scent. But if you look at what they say about these so-called different forces, they say the same. It's the same force under different names. Another theme that you pick up, like I say, is this interbreeding. And you see, our reality, I mean, we're getting deep here.
That's fine. I'm with you.
Our reality is merely what we are decoding. So the human body is what I call a biological computer. The reason that they're now wanting, and indeed they are doing, in terms of connecting computers to the human brain, so that instead of using a mouse, you just think it and the computer reacts. That's possible because they are connecting two computers. One is biological. By that I mean it has the ability not just to respond to data as programmed, but to assess information and make decisions on it. That's what the immune system's doing all the time. Your immune system, my immune system now, is picking up things in the body and making decisions on how to deal with them. We're not involved in that process. We just get on with our lives. It does it because it has a consciousness and can assess data and situations and make decisions upon them. Therefore, if you think of the wireless internet? The wireless internet, you're in a room, there's nothing you can see, it's just hidden. And if computers didn't exist, and you said to people, oh, there's a whole worldwide reality in this room that you can't see, people would say, you're mad.
You're nuts. You're nuts.
Yeah.
Yes.
But because we have computers that are tuned to that information field we call the wireless internet, you can pull the hidden onto that screen, and far from being hidden, it's a worldwide reality that you can access in Australia, in LA, in London, anywhere in the world. You can access that same collective reality. Excuse me. Why? Because it's being broadcast, and the computers are designed to decode it. And our reality is being broadcast, and our not just our brain, but our whole genetic system is decoding it. And it's decoding it within a certain frequency band we call visible light. Now, if I am broadcasting the wireless internet on a certain frequency band, the computer, which is tuned to that frequency band, will decode it. And if I change the information on that frequency band, the computer will change its reality, because it will now decode, manifest on the screen, the new reality that's replaced the one before. I suggest very strongly that what has happened is that our entire reality has been hijacked. That the human genetic manipulation that all the ancients talk about was to tune the human body computer into this fake reality. And what the Gnostics say about the archons is that they are experts in fantasia, experts in deception, experts in manifesting illusion to capture the perception of the target population. And this is what was symbolized in the Matrix movies. We are decoding a reality that appears to be so real, but it's the wireless internet equivalent that we are decoding into reality. And the genetic manipulation also included the creation of specific bloodlines, i.e. computer programs, to represent the interests of the archons within human society and to manipulate human society on their behalf. And this is where the whole ancient theme of royalty comes from. All over the world, so-called royal bloodlines have claimed the right to rule because of their descendants from the gods, the divine right to rule. And when human society started rejecting open control by inherited bloodline, i.e. royalty, although some, like the royal family in Britain, remained, most of them disappeared, but the bloodlines didn't. They went into the dark suit professions. They went into politics. They went into the corporate world. And those bloodlines consider themselves just as royal, just as special, just as different as the royals do, because they are hybrids. They are much closer in frequency terms to these archons because of their hybrid DNA, i.e. their hybrid receiver transmission system, that they can be, to use a word, possessed and have their faculties controlled more powerfully by these archontic forces than the main body of humans. Now, one of the things that become clear in my research over the years is that one of the traits, one of the most important traits in understanding the world, of these hybrid bloodlines, these quote royal bloodlines in their various forms, is that they have had deleted from their ability to manifest the emotion of empathy. They have no ability, because if they had, Jimmy, they couldn't do what they've done in terms of the way they've taken the world into where it's become. They have no ability whatsoever in putting themselves in a situation where they can empathize with the consequences for people of their actions. They have no emotional consequence, no matter how horrifically they behave. And this is where, to a vast extent, the whole phenomenon of the psychopath comes from. What is the key trait of a psychopath? What is the key trait of a sociopath, a narcissist? Which are words that all describe these bloodlines.
No emotions.
No emotion, exactly. And therefore, coming round to your question, they can do what they do, and they do what they do because they have no emotional consequence. We would do what they did. We wouldn't, but if we did, it would crush us emotionally for the rest of our lives. We couldn't live with it. To them, it's not a problem. So when you talk about manipulating wars, knowing the vast amount of carnage and all the suffering that goes off from that, that's going to be created, they have no emotional problem with that. The people running the military, the people running politics and banking. I mean, look at bankers. I mean, you know, one of the things that the archons are described as by these Gnostic texts is they are parasites, and what they've done is transfer their parasitical nature to human society. We live in a parasitical society from bankers and people like that who are parasiting off the labor and the energy of the population while lending us money that doesn't exist and charging interest on it, what we call credit. It's an absolute scam, right down to the parasites that actually feed off the human body. That's so symbolic of these parasites that feed off human society. And there's another thing. Another theme that I've picked up over the years is that these entities, they're energetic entities, and they are distorted, imbalanced energetic entities. And as a result of that, they do not have a power source, an energy source, more like it, that is naturally theirs. They have to feed off, again, piggyback off, feed off energy generated by others. And one of the themes through the years is that these entities feed off human low vibrational emotional energy. Because they are themselves in a low vibrational state, they can only absorb energy within the frequency band that they exist on. And that frequency band corresponds to low vibrational human emotional energy, all the emotions around the central emotion of fear, anxiety, depression, worry, terror, all of it. And therefore, if they are going to create a massive energy source to feed off, they have to structure, thanks to their hybrids within human society, they have to create a society that generates maximum amounts of low vibrational emotional energy. Think of how much of that is generated by a single war. Never mind the suffering and the anxiety that goes on all the time. And so I remember taking my then little boy, he's only 6'5" now, to watch the first movie of Monsters, Inc. And I nearly fell off my chair because although it was a kid's movie, it was symbolizing very blatantly exactly what I've just described.
Yes, it is, from the beginning to the end of the movie, actually.
Yeah, where the monster society has no energy source. So it has to get its energy from human society. And for people who haven't seen it, so most people have, is that they walk through these symbolic doors, i.e. gateways, symbolic gateways, through these doors. And when they go through these doors in the monster reality power station, they walk through the door into a child's bedroom. And their job as power station workers is to frighten the child. And when the child screams with fear, to catch that fear in a tube and take it back to power the monster world. That in child's a symbolic story is precisely what is happening. And when Morpheus in the Matrix holds up the battery and says that that the machines, interestingly, the archons are described in kind of what we would call robotic terms, machine-like terms, that the machines have turned humans into one of these, a battery. That's again very much along the lines of what is happening. So when
well, let me ask you, David. Let me ask you a direct question before we head off into another tangent. While we're still in the here, if you don't mind. When you describe, let's say, for instance, the Queen Mother as a reptilian, is that metaphorical or is that a literal description?
Oh, that's literal. See, this is why.
Well, I don't see you getting knighted anytime soon.
No, I've lost my knighthood, that's for sure.
Okay.
I think when I said they were doing satanic rituals at Balmoral Castle, I think that did for me.
Right.
I mean, the whole royal family thing. I mean, just up from you, we have Canada, thousands of miles away from here, and the Queen is their head of state. She's the head of state in Australia and New Zealand. I mean, the world is potty. I mean, how can we have a situation? And let's think of this. She is head of state, and anyone following her in her family is head of state. And it's not symbolic when you go deeper. She is running the show,
right?
And has the laws to allow that. They just don't broadcast them very loudly because people are told, oh, she has no power. She's just symbolic, bringing the tourists in. Yeah, come on, tell us another one. But she is only head of state of this country and Canada and Australia, etc., because of her bloodline, because of her genetics, and these bloodlines, these royal bloodlines, and again, the royal bloodlines go into the dark suit professions like the Eastern Establishment of the United States, etc. What you find is they interbreed. They interbreed obsessively. Why? Because they are holding that program, that hybrid program, which can get diluted very quickly if it interbreeds outside of itself. This is why where this whole thing about blue blood bloodlines comes from. And why they marry for genetics and not for love and get their major relationships like Prince Charles and Diana outside of the official marriage.
When you jump out of the outside of Great Britain, is it the same thing in Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates?
Yeah, I mean, look at them. That's a bloodline dynasty which claims to be royal. It's not at all. Not that royal should exist anyway. But they just call themselves a royal family. Interlopers taking over the country by force and violence. But they are interbreeding and holding the genetic pattern. The hybrids are in power everywhere. It's not just America and Britain. They're all over the place. I mean, this has been going on for so long. It's infiltrated, the world, basically. I mean, there are exceptions. Of course they are. But they're the ones that don't last very long, who get knocked out with a coup or knocked out with an assassination or whatever, or get removed in many and various ways. So as I was saying about the alternative media and that great enormous amount of it that ridicules me when I'm talking about this stuff, it's absolutely vital, can't say it loudly enough, that they look at the nature of reality and they look into the quantum physics area and related areas. This world is not solid. So it's illusory. It's holographic, illusory, physical. So when I've talked over the years about the fact that these bloodlines can shapeshift, of course, people have said, whether it's mainstream and most of the alternative, you're mad. You can't go from a physical shape to another physical shape. It's impossible. Do you know something? Yes, it is. But they're not physical. They're not solid. It's energetic. And so what is happening? Let me give you a quick story that will put this into perspective.
Sure.
There was a brilliant book written some years ago now by a guy called Michael Talbot, and it was called The Holographic Universe, in which he was looking at all the scientific evidence for the fact that this reality is holographic in terms of the physical reality that we experience, and it is. Anyway, he tells a story in that book about a hypnotist, a stage professional hypnotist who went to a party at his father's house, I think it was, and was doing party tricks for the guests. And there was one point where he had a guy, I think his name was Tom, and he was sitting in a chair, and he put him in some kind of altered state of reality. And as he was coming to an end of it, he said to this Tom, when I bring you back to a waking state, you're not going to be able to see your daughter in the room. At which point he led the daughter to stand right in front of her father. He's sitting down, she's standing up, he's looking straight into her belly. So he brings Tom apparently back to awakeness, and he said to him, Tom, can you see your daughter in the room? And he's looking around and he can't. And of course the guests are laughing because they can see her. And so he went behind the daughter and he put his hand in the small of her back and said, I'm holding something, Tom. What am I holding? And Tom, bemused, said, well, it's a watch. Well, his daughter was between him and the watch. He said, there's an inscription on the watch, Tom. Can you read it? He read the inscription. His daughter's between him and the inscription. Now, if I said that to most people, they'd say impossible. If I said that to mainstream science, impossible, not possible, ridiculous. But it's not. It's so simple to explain. Our prime form is not the so-called physical that we see. It is an energetic field. It is an information field. The holographic form is just a holographic projection of that information. So, what we're doing is decoding that information into a holographic reality. In other words, as some scientists have postured over the years, the reality that we experience only exists in that form when it's observed. I would use another word, when it's decoded. So what the hypnotist has done there, because he has put into the decoding system of Tom, in effect, a firewall that has, through the hypnotic suggestion, has blocked the brain from decoding that particular energy field that was his daughter. So he has decoded everyone else in the room and the room itself into holographic reality, because that's not been blocked. But he's been blocked from decoding his daughter. And unless he decodes her from the energetic information form into holographic form, she will not exist in his conscious physical reality. Now, these hybrid bloodlines have dual DNA, which means they have a dual energy field, information field. The DNA is merely a holographic expression of that energetic field. And it's expressing the information in that field. That's why DNA will dictate the shape and nature of your body, because it's an expression of the different information in the information field, which then manifests holographically as different kinds of bodies, different races, different colors, etc. So what happens with these hybrids is overwhelmingly in everyday life, as people interact with them, the dominant field in the hybrid field is the human field. And so as we go about our business and we see these people, we are decoding the human field. So what do we see? We see them as human, like the Queen Mother. But there are times, either because they make it happen, because they can do that, because they know how to do it by the nature of the background information they receive from birth, or what often happens with what we call a shapeshift is that it's done at a time of major emotional extreme emotion,
Distress,
anger,
right.
And why? Because when you have really deep anger, just ponder on the energetic changes taking place in your body. There's an electrical force that passes through the body as these really extreme emotions manifest. That electrical force at time of high emotion can cause the energy fields to shift and the non-human one to become the dominant one. Now, what is happening is, with a shapeshift, it's not a physical shapeshift because there's no physical, is that the person, the observer, is observing the human field. Suddenly, the non-human field becomes the dominant one. Now, the observer is decoding that. And to the observer's experience, the person they've just looked at has just changed from a human to a non-human form and then back again. It's an energetic shift, and the shape shift, as with everything in our reality, is taking place in the mind and the brain and the genetic structure of the observer.
David, let me ask you a question with that then. So is this something, this ability to recognize this, is this all you have to do is be aware? And then, it's not something you're trained or taught to do, but just as long as you are aware that it is possible, is that all you would need, to recognize who might be of this bloodline or not?
Well, what we
do you understand the question?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
What we call schizophrenia. There are many reasons for it. But one of the aspects of these, there's people who have schizophrenia, which is kind of out of their control. What I would term these bloodlines as is professional schizophrenics, in this sense. When their human form is dominant, they have a certain energy about them. And you can get caught in the idea that they're nice people, and oh no, Tony Blair would never do that. I met him once; he was a nice bloke. But when the other field comes in, then their personality is transformed. You've actually given, Jimmy, with the best possible example of this phenomena, in the sense that the Queen Mother was perceived as a lovely, kind grandmother to the nation. This woman was a vicious, satanic, child-sacrificing horror show. And I met a lady not long after Princess Diana died, who was a close friend of Diana for 9 years, up to about a couple of years before she died. And she gave me chapter and verse on the background. And, at that time, I established this reptilian phenomenon. But I never talked to her about it at all. I was talking to her about, her experiences with Diana. And then in the middle of this conversation, I still got it on tape somewhere on one of those old cassettes. She said, did you know what Diana used to call the Windsors? I said, no, what? She said, the lizards or the reptiles. And she used to say they're not human. And I said, well, what do you mean? Playing the idiot, because right. I want to, let her know that I'd come across this phenomenon and put words into her head.
Right.
She said, yeah, the royal family are hybrids. They are part human, but part reptilian, which is one of the form expressions of the archons. And she was telling me about, in fact, I've quoted her in my books, what Diana said about the Queen Mother. And one of the words she used is that woman is evil. Interestingly, too, just as a quick aside, the lady involved was an alternative healer who worked at an alternative healing centre near Regent's Park in London. And Diana used to come round for, healing sessions. And what used to happen is that what this lady called friendly people at MI5 used to leave her messages. And one of the themes that the messages said were they were warning Diana that the Windsors and the establishment were out to kill her. And so when Paul Burrell, the Diana's butler, came out years later, after I put this in my books, saying that this letter existed where Diana was saying, well, I'm worried about basically Prince Charles is going to be killed in a car accident. That was no surprise to me, because I heard about that years and years before. These people are evil. Now, that's an interesting point. Evil. Everything in the archontic realm and everything in the archontic agenda is an inversion. And how symbolic, probably more than that the word evil is the reverse of the word live, because they are an inversion of life, and they feed not only off human low vibrational emotional energy, they feed off the energy generated by death and decay. And when people say to me, and I understand this, why are these bloodlines destroying and killing their own planet and their own ecosystem, which they have to live in? Well, maybe this is not their reality. See, the archontic reality feeds off death. It's what people call hell. That's their reality, and therefore, it's no contradiction that they are progressively. This is another massive part of the agenda, Jimmy. Is they're changing planet Earth in terms of its atmosphere, in terms of its ecosystem, into their reality. That's what we're seeing unfolding. This is one of the reasons why the amount of radiation technologically generated has increased by millions and millions of times in the last 50 years. Some open-minded scientists are saying this is a experiment with human life. We don't know what the outcome is. Well, maybe they do.
Well, how many reptilians are there? Is there a couple of dozen? Is there a few hundred? Are we talking billions?
Well, in the end, they are. If you like, I talked earlier about the human body is a holographic projection of an information field.
Right.
So basically, these reptilians, greys, and other types, they seem to be the dominant ones. They are holographic projections of the archontic energetic base form. And so this distortion, this computer virus, which I would very much symbolize this archontic force as, can take endless different forms or very few forms, depending on what he wants to do. But in terms of, it's funny, I've got a friend who has an associate in Switzerland who, I don't agree with it, but he was doing research into creating iris scanning technology. This guy in Switzerland. And this led to him looking deeply through microscopes into, I think it was 2,300 eyes or pairs of eyes. And he didn't know that my friend was a friend of mine. He just, the two knew each other. And they were chatting one day. And he said, in this research with eyes, he said, there's one thing I can't explain. He said, of all the eyes I looked at, he said, I reckon about 4% were of reptilian type. And my research would say to me that actually expressed as bloodline within human society, I'd say these hybrids are about 4 or 5%. And they're the ones that sit in the inner circle of the spider's web, being dictated through by the spider. Because, you know, when they do that, the reason that these people are Satanists, overwhelmingly Satanists, and they do satanic ritual like the British royal family, is because what is happening during the ritual is that there is, and I've talked to many people who've taken part in these rituals and come out of it. They are worshipping the gods, you know, and the gods are this archontic force. So what is happening is that when they're doing the major satanic rituals, what are they doing? Through the chants and the ritual, they are manipulating the energy field into a certain frequency.
They're aligning it. Absolutely.
Yeah, they're aligning it because at the same time, these entities are doing their version of the ritual and aligning the energies so that there is a point where these entities can slip through into the satanic ritual in the human realm, and I talk to people who've witnessed these rituals around the world and seen this phenomenon happen, where these entities manifest in various forms. Reptilian is a regular one, and so when you look, Jimmy, at this ancient theme of sacrifice to the gods, and sacrifice of young virgins to the gods. Well, young virgins is just code for children, which is why the major focus of satanic ritual is rituals involving children. Now, what is happening here? During the ritual, as they sacrifice the person, what happens, and again, this has been explained to me and described to me by many people unconnected around the world in very common themes. They then drink the blood of the sacrificed person, and they're feeding off the energy of the sacrificed person through the blood, which is just the, if you like, holographic expression of the meridian lines of what the Chinese call qi that's going through the body on another level, which is just information passing through the body, like information passes through a computer. Mm-hmm. And acupuncture is using needles and other techniques to keep that flow of information in an optimum state. Because if it's not in an optimum state, just like a computer starts to get slow when it's taken over by a virus and the information flow is affected, it stops working. Well, in human terms, people get ill in various ways. But while they're drinking the blood, what's happening is the terror being experienced by the sacrificial victim is being absorbed by these archontic entities in their realm of energetic existence, which corresponds with the frequency band of fear and terror in human terms. So sacrificing to the gods has been going on for as long as we know in human history. And for a long time, it was done openly because it was acceptable. And then it became unacceptable. So now they do it in secret, but it's still happening. And, you know, when you look at Vlad the Impaler, from the land of the vampires in Transylvania, Romania. He and his family, Vlad Dracula and the family, they were the inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. Mm-hmm. Where it comes from. And Dracula did what? Shapeshifted. Dracula lived off or drank human blood. And Vlad the Impaler, of course, is probably the most famous Satanist and blood drinker in history, because he impaled people on sticks and various other forms of impalement, and drank their blood and just let them die slowly from being impaled. Now, I said earlier that these bloodlines interbreed. Well, these bloodlines go back into what we call ancient history, carrying this code. And it is absolutely no accident that the British royal family, Prince Charles, the Queen, is a genetic descendant of Vlad Dracul. No accident at all. But what he did in terms of blood drinking, etc., in open, because he controlled the country, they do in secret at places like Balmoral Castle and many other places. In fact, Prince Charles actually publicly acknowledged his descendants from Vlad Dracul, and now has a house in the area where Dracul used to live. Goes there quite regularly, and the connection is through a lady called Mary of Teck, who is the present Queen's grandmother. That's where that bloodline connection comes from.
Is there any way to avoid? Let me ask you this. This is kind of direct, but let's just say, here I am doing my thing, and somebody comes along and says, in a position to change my future or somebody else's future, and you look at them. How do you determine if this is somebody from the wrong side, or is it automatic? Are they from the wrong side? If they are in a position of power, either with the bank or with a network or with the media or with a corporation that allows you to climb forward, how do you, what kind of radar do you have up, and how do you know if it's okay to proceed?
Well, it depends how sensitive you are. If you're completely welded to five sense reality,
right,
then you become insensitive to energy. It's almost what it is. It is when you're completely focused on the material. It brings you into a form of energetic. Not in the full meaning of the word, but you get what I mean. Energetic solidity, energetic density. But the more sensitive you become, they generate. Obviously, they would a different energetic field, a different energetic frequency, and you can pick it up. It's just something that you kind of know and get more sensitive to. And many ways, the eyes are the window on the soul. And
exactly.
You can pick things up in the eyes. And I'll tell you a story if we've got time.
Yeah, well, and we do. I'll make sure we have time. But let me ask you this: don't take this the wrong way, or I want you to reveal something.
Right.
Have you ever, say, rejected a book deal, looked in somebody's eyes, and just went, you know what, pass?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah. Well, there's a group of people, my family, really, that published my books because I wanted. Well, first of all, I reached the point when I was revealing this where no publisher would touch me with a barge pole because they were terrified of libel actions. So I've got that in house, if you like. So it's more under control. But yeah, all the time, people will ask me to do things, or they'll want to talk to me or meet me or do this or do that, and I'll pick up their energy and I'll say, it's not for me. All the time, yeah. And more so the more sensitive you become. Because they do generate a different frequency.
Well, you must have been able to pick up with me that I was one of the good guys, because you and I started a few weeks or a month ago an immediate correspondence, and if you know what I'm saying, and you welcomed me and so forth. But how were you able to detect that Jimmy's one of the good guys, or did you just make a phone call?
Well, it's not. It's not you necessarily go through that process. It's just that intuition is higher, is your higher sensitivity. Your intuition comes from levels of awareness which is beyond this manipulated reality, and it is the connection to higher wisdom, higher awareness. So when you have an intuitive feeling, you don't put your hand on your heart and say, I think. You say, I know, I just know.
Right.
Why? because intuition comes from a level of awareness that knows it doesn't have to work it out. Thought is a very, very low level of awareness because it's having to work things out all the time because its sources of information are so limited on purpose. So you get intuition. So I'll get an email, and someone will say, "Can you do this?" And it's not, "Oh, well, I'm going to think about that." No, it's yes, no, and that's how I kind of work. Funny enough, I'm just looking at something on my computer at the moment as we're talking, related to what we're talking about, and I've found this quote which I used in my Wembley Arena talk 2 years ago. I'm doing another Wembley Arena talk in London on October 25th all day. And it's from a guy. How I came across this quote, Jimmy, is that I was reading this article about a guy called Anton Steiger, and he is a Swiss clairvoyant, and it was just an article about his life. It wasn't about stuff I'm talking about or anything. And he was talking about, what he sees and other stuff. And then in the middle of this article, he describes this. I'll give you the quote that he's experienced many times. He said, "When I see people in business or politics who are particularly trapped by the material world, for example, I notice that they no longer have any light bodies at all, because their genetics is different, so their energetic fields are different. In many of these people, the point of light at the heart chakra, this is this intuitive center which connects us to higher consciousness. In many of these people, the point of light at the heart chakra, which is otherwise always present in humans, is no longer visible to me. Instead, I see something, wait for this. Instead, I see something like a layer of shiny tar around them in which a monstrous being in the shape of a lizard can be distinguished. When such people speak on television, for example, I see a crocodile shape manifesting itself around the person, like in a concave mirror. I don't see the light of their throat or forehead chakras. You pick these things up. He wasn't talking about, these reptilian entities manipulating the world. He was just saying, look, this is what I see. And when you pick all these different strands of information up, ancient and modern, and you put it together, it is in plain sight. And the reason it's not to most people is this information is A, not made public, and B, the dots of the information are kept apart. And when you put them together, it's an open book.
I have about 20 or 30 emails in front of me, all asking basically the same question. So let me, please, let's indulge all of these. They're going to think that I ignored all of these emails, but they all basically have the same question. And before we part ways, I want to ask you this, but then I'm going to ask you about MH370. And I know you've got something to say about that. So let's just get to this question here, which is basically, what's the solution to the current situation? I mean, and I know that that's a broad stroke of the pen, but you've laid it out there for us. What is a solution?
Well, we're drowning in solutions, and most of them just create more problems. Surely it is most sensible to remove the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem is human unconsciousness. And the deception of human perception. And what has happened is the point of attention, in other words, the point of awareness of humans overwhelmingly, has been pulled into the 5 sense level of reality. And once they've got us there, they have disconnected us from higher levels of our awareness, which can see A, what is going on so clearly, and B, can give us the inspiration for what our individual contribution to changing that can be. And also by isolating our point of attention in the 5 senses and disconnecting us from this higher awareness, if they can control the sources of information, i.e. the education system and the media, etc., they can program that isolated point of attention with the reality that they want people to believe is real. That is the perception deception in the simplest of terms. And this is why I'm talking a number of times today about the fact that the alternative media and people who see the world in a different way and can see some of what's going on, why they need to open their minds and put aside their belief systems, be they religious, political, or scientific, and let the information be their guide. And if the conspiracy and the oppression of humanity is about pulling us into a tiny perception of self, then the answer is to break that mind prison and start to see ourselves in different terms. What that mind prison does is give us the perception that we, the I, is our body, our name, our life story, our race, our religion, our country, whatever. They are not what we are. They are our experiences. And what a major part of the perception deception is tricking us into perceiving our experiences as who we are. And I can only talk about my own experience, and that is that when you break out of that mind prison, that perception program, and you go with the information and your intuitive knowing rather than your preconceived idea, belief system, life ceases to be one of limitation and becomes a great adventure where information, awareness, insight just unfolds day after day after day. And with that comes the inspiration, if you like, of how best you can contribute to making a difference. You know, what happened to me, Jimmy, is a massive, massive turning point in my life was early on in this, when I decided that if what I thought and what I intuitively felt were ever at odds, I was going to go with my intuition. When you do that, you can face some challenges, as I did with all the ridicule, because your intuition is not coming from the perception base of your thoughts, your lower mind, your five sense mind, if you like, which is sees everything according to how the system has told it to see itself and the world. So you're going to start, when you follow your intuition and your feelings, and you go with spontaneity, you are going to start doing and saying things that are at odds with the established order. And as most people are programmed to believe in the established order and the established perception of everything, then you're going to get ridicule and dismissal and probably condemnation and everything. But if you keep going and you keep going and you don't bow to it, suddenly what happens is your, if you like, intellectual mind observes this process. This is what happened to me. And it sees that while following your intuition, because your intellectual mind is trying to marginalize and suppress your intuition because it's a threat to its omnipotence in terms of dictating reality and perception.
Right.
But what happens when you go with your intuition and you get into scrapes and you get into challenges? But what then happens is it turns out in the end brilliant, and it doesn't turn out brilliant despite or because of what despite what has happened to you, but because of what has happened to you, the good and the challenges all combined. And what happens then is your intellect looks at this and says, well, hold on a second. When you follow this intuition, you may face some challenges, but it all works out. And what happens at that point is that what you think and what you intuitively feel and know become one. And the war stops between the intellectual mind and the intuitive knowing, and they move as one unit. So, what you get in people is that intuitively they'll think, oh, I need to do this. and I really want to do this. I feel I need to do this. And the intellectual mind goes, you can't do that. What will your family think? What will the people at work think? What about your job? You can't do this. You can't do that. There's a war. But what happens once this war ends in the way I've described is when you think, I just know I've got to be there. I've got to do this. And what your intellect says, well, okay, let's go. The war ends. And what that opens up is not just a massive gateway to insight, which is merely accessing levels of ourselves, not some external entity, of ourselves that know how all this operates. You also access that insight and inspiration for how I can contribute. Because the thing is that Einstein talked about you cannot change what one state of consciousness has created with the same state of consciousness. You can't do it because that state of consciousness will just repeat what it's already created. You have to go to a higher, more expanded level of consciousness to sort out the problems that lower levels of consciousness have created. You can't do it with the same level of consciousness. So in the end, I mean, I think when people ask the question, what could we do? They might expect an answer that says, well, what we can do is we need to get this organized, get that organized, get this organized. We need to get a committee. We need someone to take the minutes. And then we need to do this. Then we need to go on that protest. Well, that is the movie screen. That is the movie screen. While we change the movie screen is to change what's being projected on the movie screen. And to do that, we have to go into a greater level of awareness, a greater level of consciousness. And from that, everything else comes. Because just as the world that we have collectively created is a manifestation of all human perceptions put together, that's what the collective reality is. When those perceptions change, human reality must change. And we have been manipulated into low vibrational emotional states. So we have to start getting a grip of that so we don't allow our emotions, low vibrational emotion, to dictate our behavior and dictate our reality. In other words, instead of saying, well, I'd like to speak out, but what about the consequences, emotion, fear? Then you speak out. I mean, you are infinite awareness. You are all that is, has been, and ever can be. You are all possibility having an experience. There is nothing to fear. So let's do what we instinctively feel our contributions are. Let's speak our truth and let's live our truth. And that will start the change that will bring this thing down, because it is an edifice of power that is founded and glued together. It's a house of cards.
Right.
It's glued together only by human ignorance and human fake perception and human fear of doing anything outside the norm because they fear the consequences of doing so. Put the fear aside, open your mind, open your heart, go with your intuitive knowing, even if your mind's screaming no, and your life will change. And when your life changes, that which you interact with changes, and the whole thing moves on. And it is changing. It is changing. People are more and more going through this process of opening their minds. And once they do, their life changes because they're creating their life experience from another level of awareness. Thus, what appears on the screen, their life, must change.
Well, and that's a good, having that kind of moral barometer, so to speak, and, basing everything on truth is how you should live your life anyway. You know what I mean? And if that's the kryptonite, then you're okay.
Yeah, I mean,
if you know what I'm saying, that's exactly right. I wholly agree with you, and it only makes sense. Hey, David, really quick, we only have. And thank you for hanging on for an extra 15 minutes, by the way. We have another 5 or 7 or 8 minutes before I have to wind things down here. I have to ask you about MH370. Can you give me a little bit? What do you think is going on, and do you have any private knowledge of what's happened?
Well, the thing is, Jimmy, I have a policy of never talking about things I haven't researched in detail, because I think that insults the audience. And through this period, I've just been watching this, and letting the process unfold. And I've not researched it in the kind of detail that I can really talk about it. But obviously, it's a very, very strange phenomenon, and makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, because they have sold us the idea that they lost contact with the plane because this was turned off or that was turned off, when the technology is there to make sure they don't lose contact with planes. They have other means of keeping a track of it. So the authorities, again, we're looking at 9/11, and we're looking at the structure of the spider's web that I was talking about.
Right.
The people going out searching for it, they think they're searching for it. The people putting out the statements about, that this is what we're doing today, and this is what we have happening, and this is what we know so far. That they're doing what they think they're doing because they think that's what they need to do. But you go deeper into the shadows, where whatever has happened to this plane was orchestrated and decided it was going to happen. And bingo, they absolutely know what happened to that plane. They know where it is. They know why they did it. But that's in the shadows. But eventually, as with 9/11, most people involved in 9/11, both before, during, and after, genuinely believe that the official story is true. But you get deep in the shadows, and that's where it was orchestrated from. And from that perspective, the official story is an absolute pack of nonsense. So as with 9/11, we have brought to the surface information in abundance, many in various people, many in various ways and specializations, to show without any question that the official story is a big lie. And the same will happen with this plane eventually. But, very clearly, it wasn't an accident. Not very, very clearly. So what else it was, we'll find out in time.
Yeah, the breaking news right before we went on the air tonight, and I don't know if you've heard this yet over in the UK, but this came out from the Atlanta Register. They've got a special report that was released today that apparently we have been looking in the wrong ocean. And when you think about that, now there's been a left and a right turn from the very first moment that this plane was in distress. Nothing has been true. There's been no truth. And
Nothing. And see what they do. One of the things you have to get streetwise to are when a story breaks that they don't want the truth to come out. They'll give false leads all over the place and false information, and conflicting information even, because what they're trying to do is scramble the waters, and scramble the clarity. And this is what researchers have to do. They have to, not least with 9/11 and many other things, you have to slowly unpick the curtain that's put across it, and eventually you see behind the curtain and you see what actually happened. And so the process of putting information into the public arena about this plane was classic disinformation, classic muddying the waters. So there's so many strands that lead to no other strands that people just lose the plot and hit cul-de-sacs all over the place. And that's why you have to be streetwise, and the more experience you have with it, the more likely you are to uncover it.
There's one little thing, and I want you to chew on this after the show. But there's one thing. Forget about everything else. Forget about tracking. Forget about black boxes and transponders. Take all of that off of the table. All of it off of the table. Take iPads off the table, iPhones, all of that off of the table. But Rolls-Royce, when they sell you, when you lease a plane, you are leasing Rolls-Royce engines. And when you lease those engines on a Boeing 777, you are getting a maintenance contract with Rolls-Royce back in Coventry. And with that, as soon as that engine starts, the telemetry goes back to Rolls-Royce, and they're monitoring oil pressure, engine speed, everything on that plane until the engines are shut off again. And you are paying for a technician back at Rolls-Royce to make sure that your plane is perfect. So to tell me, forget about everything else. Rolls-Royce knows where that plane is.
Yeah, exactly. And what it is, you see, we keep coming back, Jimmy, to this word ignorance. And there's the great line, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. So people are choosing now to be ignorant with the internet because the information's there if they want to look for it and want to educate themselves. But it's one of the great ways. I've said this for years. One of the great ways that this cabal suppresses and manipulates is by compressing through the control of information the sense of the possible. The human sense of the possible. This is so important because if you can compress and suppress the sense of the possible, then you can operate outside of that possible in the way you manipulate society. And when people like you, me, and many others come out and say, actually, this is what happened, they did it like this, because it's outside of people's sense of the possible, then they reject it by reflex action. And another part of that suppressing the sense of the possible is that you compress the information that people have on actually, in the example you give, of actually how things work. And if you are in that, and most people are in that state, then when they come out and say, well, they turned the transponder off or something and we lost contact with the plane, you have no other point of reference if you're not going to get yourself educated, except to say, well, no, they lost the plane because they turned the transponder off, and with the transponders off, they can't track the plane. Well, they can. It's just that you don't know that, and so a lot of this stuff, a lot of this manipulation in all areas of society actually depends upon this human ignorance. So what do? We get informed. And if someone in authority tells us something, no matter who they are or how famous they are, then don't take it on just because they've said it. Question it, check it. And when you do, you'll be astonished how many times you'll realize you've been lied to.
You're exactly right. And I have to say, thank you. Thank you very much for coming on the show tonight.
Pleasure.
We barely touched the surface. I can see how you do 10 hours over at Wembley. Anyway, hey, right after the show, right after I'm done, I'm going to give you a call right back, and I'll say good night then. Right now, I got to roll credits. How's that?
Okay. See you then, Jimmy.
All right. All the best, David.
Come up here. It's nice now.
Wasn't too bad, was it? Thanks, David.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Bye. And that is what I'm talking about. You come here on a Friday night and spend 2.5, 3 hours with us. Just hang out. You're going to learn something. And again, I got to thank David Icke for coming on with us tonight. And I just have to say, it's about learning, and I learned a lot. And I'm sorry I didn't get to all of the emails. I didn't get to all of the tweets and stuff that came in tonight because I was listening just like everybody else was. And that was extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. Coming up next is Explorations with Michio Kaku. So hang out for that. And then we'll have After Dark with Brian Alvarez. Next week on Wednesday is Marshall Clarfield. And with Marshall, we're going to be going over a lot of them. Well, you know what? No, I'm going to hold that off. Okay, but Marshall Clarfield is on Wednesday. On Friday is Craig Brown with the Dragonfly drone situation. And then Thursday, I'm holding back for third phase of Moon, and we will see. And hold on for a quick second. I got to do something really fast. Okay, we're cool there. And that's it. Now, there's one other thing that I want everybody to think about this weekend, because I'm going to address this also on Wednesday. And David Icke tonight alluded to this just a little bit, but it's really, the question is, who are we? You know, what are we and who are we? You know, we can reach out and we can touch it. We think that we're touching and feeling things. But the real question is, it goes a little bit deeper than that. And that is, who are we? And I'm going to have a guest on Wednesday before Clarfield is with us to discuss just that. All the way down to the subatomic level. Who are we? What are we? For real. Think about that. And I've got a surprise guest on Wednesday to deal with that. Okay, let's see here. There was a couple of things I wanted to get out there. One of them was this. This email came in from Renee. Do you have any suggestions on how to ease our transition into the next few decades for more representative governments and economy based on social justice and saving the natural environment? I didn't read this question because as I was reading it, he was in the middle of answering it, Renee. So I hope that you caught that. And I thought that was really cool. I only got the first part of your email out, and the reason why I did that was because there was another 10 or 20 emails right behind it that was the same. And Demian, I didn't get to your email either. I apologize for that. And it was a great question. I just couldn't get to it. All right, so with that, this is Friday night. I want everybody to have a great, spectacular, and fun weekend. Coming up next, like I said, is Michio Kaku. Whew, man. David Icke is no joke. He is no joke. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. The announcers are Steve Harder, Mark D. Kovar. Music is Doug Aldrich. You're listening to him right now. Fade to Black, Friday edition for Bell Gab. It's produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Have a great night, everybody.